I'm asking questions just to get a feel for everybody's thoughts.
Well, as we learned in the presentation this morning from PFM, sale of the system could take up to 2 years. This has to be started immediately.
And the reason why I agree with Commissioner Walk is because of that consent decree that you do have. So you're on the hook. Let's say that Buena Vista Boston comes online in September of 2023, which is what we're projecting. So that means by September of 2025, you two have addressed and eliminated your SSO issues. And like Commissioner Walk just said, even if you said today you want to explore some of our system, you're not going to meet that same timeline. So you're kind of, you would have two trains running on parallel tracks.
I'll add one other piece, which is my experience from Pennsylvania American approaches to buy a system. If you're doing camera, you'll know the condition of those lines, and you'll be doing remediation on those lines, which will give you sort of a set value and a set condition for those lines. The approach Pennsylvania American has taken in other communities that I represent is if you don't camera them and you don't know, they just consider it to be in the worst condition. So that way, when they offer you a price, it's that lowball number, because they say, hey, look, we're taking this on, we don't know what it is, we're gonna assume it's terrible, we have to do remediation on it. So if you're doing this project sort of in line with that, you know, you're gonna know what you have, and so that way it could actually help increase your potential value.
That's true.
Kevin, how many years do you think to do the initial run through, just ballpark costs overall for everything? I know it's,
That's almost impossible to answer because you'd have to get in and start to televise your system. So just for example, just tonight, we're at Happy Hollow. And that's just that, the interceptors of Happy Hollow, you're looking, by our estimates, of about $500,000 to do just your, what are called category 4 and category 5 defects, your worst, the ones that are 5 years or less in terms of tendency of having to do something. And that's just that one section. So it would really be difficult for me to say that. That's not counting anything with pump stations, you have to look at all your pump stations and all that.
any other questions for Kevin on this?
How many zones are you figuring?
Well, when I tossed out that number for Shaler, it's all topography based. It's where your pump stations are. So you could probably do it based on your pump stations. Then maybe there's always like this one kind of oddball. There's just sort of like, it's the catch-all piece. So for you, I would probably say 6 to 8.
So it could be 6 year, if you want a year basically.
Correct.
Area, 6 year being the best, be back to A in 5 years.
Correct. Yes.
Worst case, 8.
Yes.
So basically what this entails is you go to a zone, you're gonna camera every sanitary line in that zone.
Yes.
Isn't that ballpark per zone, or just roughly?
Of televising
Yeah.
cost? Well, it's, you usually want to say about $1 to $2 a foot to televise. So if you split it up, just trying to think off the top of my head, might be looking at about 10 miles per zone. So probably looking about, half, 250,000 to televise the zone.
Per zone?
Yeah, roughly.
But we had talked about, we had some people talk about buying our own camera. Is that a better option, or is it better to have someone come in and do it?
If you felt that you'd have to get your staff, you'd have to purchase it, so there's that amount. You'd have to get your staff trained in NASCO, certification of being able to televise it and characterize the defects. And you'd have to be able to commit that you now have a sanitary sewer crew. Like, those 2 to 3 guys are doing just that. It's not Monday, we're gonna go
It's
televise.
just probably not worth it.
And then Tuesday, we're gonna get a patch, and then Wednesday, we're gonna do stuff in the park, you gotta have that crew.
Dan, I'd like to make a comment on that.
Yeah, good,
What we found out when we decided to go ahead and camera Happy Hollow. It had not been done for decades, and the decision was made that the line would have to be cleaned before it could be cambered. And we may find that's true in multiple cases, because there is a list of places that have been recently lined in the past 10 years. Veolia has that. But if you just send a crew in to camera those lines and they run into obstruction, that cammering will stop at that point. So you have to look at these things together, cleaning and cammering. And Kevin, can you address that a little bit further, please?
Sure, yeah, there's two terms. There's light cleaning, which is you basically run a jetter down the line, and that gets your basic debris moving and out of the way. And then there's also heavy cleaning. That's cutting out root obstructions, mechanically cleaning out large rocks from pipes, things of that nature. Those are obviously different costs. Light cleaning is 25 cents a foot, whereas heavy cleaning, you get $3, $4, $5 a foot, depending on what they find. Yeah.
Is this something Veolia can do for us or no, for the cleaning?
Is that to me or?
Okay.
Dan, so the lines that would need light cleaning could definitely be done by Veolia's crew. We have a nice jetter. The camera system that we have currently will not work because there's no way to record to send this information to KLH. If we did purchase a new camera, which we had talked about before, that new camera would do the trick. Now keep in mind that multiple of these interceptors are maybe perhaps not accessible with a truck. They have to be a track machine that would take this in there, hence the reason that we had to do Happy Hollow on a bid. Also keep in mind that these things can be set up through the shake hog. We'll talk about that later.
Any other questions? Comments?
I just have one last question. Kevin, as part of this assessment, we had talked about the necessity for a rate increase due to PA American's recent increase. Should I hold that off with my discussion on sanitary? You want to briefly touch on it now and then get back to it later? Because I have asked that you consider helping with the rate structure.
Yeah, I think that would probably be better for you to
Yeah, that's number 2 on the list. so we'll-
discuss yourself.
We'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Mark, which one were you gonna be talking about?
I don't have the agenda. Number 11.
Number 11?
Redevelopment.
Okay. We're gonna move that up to number 1, yeah, just Mark doesn't have to stay here all night. Oh, I'm sorry, we're gonna do, for that, public comment, Mike Isberg. Sure. And Mike, you can state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Mike Isberg, 696 McKeesport Road, Elizabeth. I was here, I think, last month, talking about requesting a new easement for some property we have down behind the giant eagle. My engineer, Pat Cooper, has been in contact with Kevin, the township engineer here, and asked me to come tonight and speak. So this is two easement issues. I'm going to say that the one we talked about last month is totally irrelevant. That's I was asking for a new easement, sort of tabled that for the moment. What we're talking about this evening is for the existing easement that we share. It's on the Yarborough property. We both share I believe it's a 40-foot wide easement for your sanitary sewer.
Is that the hillside?
Yeah, that's correct. It's the hillside, yeah, existing easement. And what we need to do is put a stream crossing in to get to our property. So there are really two issues. One is that there's a sanitary manhole. I'm sure some of you recall from the photographs. It's about 5 feet in the air. We'd like to raise that, lower it approximately 3 feet, put a watertight manhole lid on it. We'd like to pour a concrete, basically crossing there, put some pipes in, of course, get a DEP permit to do all that. But since we share this easement and we would be going across the existing sanitary sewer line, we obviously want to work with you folks, make sure that we are on the same page, because we'll have to service our road, you'll have to service your sewer line. So what we're proposing to do is to put the pipes, not over top of the sewer line, just put the concrete slab over the sewer line, so that if there is a repair that's required, it's not over top of the manhole, it's not over top of the actual sanitary sewers, it's next to it. And I don't know if, Kevin, if you have any questions or comments on that.
So I've spoken with Pat Cooper of Gateway Engineers, who's Mike's consultant, and he sent over some different sketches and proposed improvements, and it's essentially a box culvert. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, they would be pipes, but
Oh, pipes, okay.
same concept.
And then lowering the manhole down to be flush with that crossing, with watertight seals and lids on the manhole, so that Wiley Run does not infiltrate into it any more than what it may already do. And this is something that I know Mike is interested in trying to move along, and hopefully at your January meeting, we consider putting his proposal on your agenda to vote on it after your solicitor reviews everything on his end. But from our technical review, we review Gateway's work, and it appears to be sound.
Question for you. I talked to Billy from Veolia after the last meeting.
Yes.
He said he was concerned because we did raise up the 5 feet. Now we want to bring it back 3 feet. He was shaking his head no. I'm just worried, obviously Gateway's doing their engineering. I just want to make sure that it's not something that's gonna infiltrate the stream, or, we're back to the same issue we had years ago before they raised it up.
Right, so what Gateway is proposing is a more watertight solution than what exists currently and what may have existed back then. So that's the whole key, is that as long as they can create a lockdown system that'll eliminate surface infiltration through the manhole, you're always gonna get some through the pipes, unfortunately. But we're just concerned about the surface and everything of that nature.
If that would fail, then whose responsibility would be to fix it?
That's probably where Matt earns his money.
So we would have some kind of maintenance agreement.
Yeah, there'd have to be some sort of joint maintenance agreement on that.
And to be clear, the manhole, my understanding is that it would not let any sewage out, and it would not let any stormwater in. Correct?
Yeah, it's considered a lockdown manhole.
I'm not an expert on that.
So where's
That's just that.
okay. So where's this is the same one though, like where we were gonna expand the pump station down in that area as well? Is that the same location?
Correct, same area, but not on your property.
So, that's correct.
You're just considering the stream crossing, correct?
At this meeting, we're just talking about the stream crossing, and the existing easement, not the easement that we asked for at the prior meeting.
So
They're
there's
not
not
shift
looking,
your road over more towards the railroad track.
Essentially.
Is that a cost saving measure? Because the existing easement goes through the hillside. Is there a reason you couldn't cut through the hillside? Is it literally just a cost savings to move it over? I'm just curious.
Well, that's probably more for the easement we were asking for the last meeting.
So now you are going to cut the hillside.
It's very complicated, it's unrelated from this particular request. I could elaborate, but I don't want to confuse the commission.
so there's two easements. There's one on the hillside, the slope part, and there's one on the flat part, right in front of the gate, the fencing for water. What Mike is proposing is to basically have a blended 60-foot easement. Use the 20 that's with Elizabeth Township, and 40 with, Yarborough, thank you. So this way, it avoids him having to create a new easement agreement with the township, which would potentially impact any expansion on Wiley. So it's,
How does this impact our expansion? Because we know it's coming.
this current one does not, which is why we've been working with Gabe to try to find a solution for that.
We tried to design it that way.
Yeah, the initial one, I probably would not have recommended to you because 5 years from now, you'd be coming back to Mike, basically taking it, and that would engender some bad feelings. So this is a creative workaround.
Any questions from Mike, anyone?
You know,
Good.
I've been in a few manholes. That manhole, is that go to the, Kyle may know the answer, is that manhole go to the pump station? Usually there's typically 3 manholes. One that goes to the pump station, one goes river, one that goes downstream from the pump station to wherever it's going, because of the plant. So,
Sure, this one comes down, is that Wiley Run, is that the name of that stream?
Yes.
So it comes down Wiley Run behind the, like to the right of the giant eagle, the railroad tracks, and this is the manhole right there. The pipe makes a left at that manhole and goes to the pump station. And then there's a second manhole right before it goes into the pump station.
This is the one.
If you have that drawing, I can show you.
This is the one that just turns it
this turns it,
into the influent manhole right in front of the, yeah.
which one will raise it? There's a value on which one will raise it, this one won't. So it's just a flow, it's coming downstream. It's not, it's before the pump station. It's not the one that's.
It's a standard manhole, doesn't do anything special.
I have a question. Whose cost is it gonna be that, say, we do approve this?
Oh, we would pay for everything.
I have a question about the watertight lid.
Yes.
Is that just the standard one that just kind of, it's almost like an insert, or is it more involved than that?
This will have the lockdown
Okay.
inside, so what you might be thinking of like the old man pans, where you just sort of set them inside. They're kind of like going away with Betamax. This is more, you lock it down in the interior with flanges, and then that prevents surcharge coming up and minimizes water revenue.
It's like there's a, I've seen there, it's almost like there's a, I'll say fiberglass or a plastic manhole cover, and then this goes on top of it, it's like a cap before the manhole cover goes on, and it all goes on that. Flan, basically, big rubber flange.
I'm not sure, but I think what we're proposing is a mechanical locking with.
Yeah. Kevin, who inspects this, DEP or county, or who comes in and makes sure that, everything's okay?
Well, you have us, and then it'd probably be wise for you to have county plumbing come in as well. Yes.
On the shared piece, can you have an agreement with them?
Say that again, please?
So, you said you're gonna share an easement with who?
There's an existing shared, well, there's an existing shared easement that we both have, myself and the sanitary, on Yarborough's property. None of this is actually on your property or my property, it's all on Yarborough's.
Okay. Is there any way that Yarborough would fight this?
No, I have an agreement with him and we're in agreement.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
I have one other question. What's the material that's gonna go on top? You got a concrete over it?
Yes, the pipe would be like a plastic, heavy-duty corrugated pipe with riprap at the entrance and then like an 8-inch thick concrete slab on top.
So if we have to access that line, if there's a break or something going in there, we have to go through all of that then?
No, the way we designed it is you only have to go through the concrete like if it was a regular street. All the pipes would be next to, but not over top of the sanitary sewer. So as far as next step is, it sounds like Kevin has approved the technical end of this. Would it be more of an easement agreement that would send to the solicitor? just wanna make sure I know what
I mean, I
next step
can
would
see
be.
that, are we gonna have like a construction agreement, like, cause you're gonna do all the work, right? So we have to have something in place that you're gonna do the work, our people are gonna inspect, it has to be their specs and all that business.
Almost like a mini developer.
Yeah, like something like that.
Yeah, where you post a bond or an escrow, which, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Matt,
Yeah.
obviously KLH's gonna have to approve these plans, they pay for the OH console as well.
Yeah, if I do it like a standard developer's agreement, I'd have them escrow, legal and engineering, like a certain amount for each that would be replenished if it's used, and that way, like, all of the approvals and all of that stuff would be, they have to put escrow in up front. So I would do it like a general developer's agreement, like when they're installing a sanitary line, I would just do it a little bit different, because this is just a construction, but they are impacting the line with lowering that manhole. So I would probably, I mean, that's just the way I'm thinking of it now, just offhand, I haven't really put any thought to it, but that's probably what I would do.
And that makes sense to me, I'm fine with both of those escrows, so.
Okay. That makes
So I have forms I can start.
Okay, so we'll be in touch with you.
Yeah, somebody can be, your lawyer.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, have your people call.
Okay, next, we're gonna do number 11 first, redevelopment authority, Commissioner Walk.
Yeah, I'd like to, introduce to the board, Mark Patrick. Mark Patrick is currently serving on our planning. He's a lifelong resident of Elizabeth Township. He has extensive knowledge about redevelopment authority. This specifically has come up recently in that we formed another steering committee to help with the Warden Mine Douglas Run remediation. And the board has heard, previous boards have heard a little bit about redevelopment authority, but Mr. Patrick is, I consider him an expert in this. He has extensive knowledge. I was going to start going through his curriculum vitae, but instead I'd just like to introduce him to the board and have him give a little bit of his background in redevelopment and how he can help Elizabeth Township move forward with this. And if you wouldn't mind, would you give him a chair, because he's going to be standing there for a while.
Well, can you hear me now? So maybe it's important to provide a little context, add a couple of context to what Kyle has already said with respect to the issue that Mark Kane, Kyle and I actually had a couple of meetings on with that Warden Mine AMD issue. And specifically, the issue seems, or the major stumbling block at this time, there's plenty of money apparently out there to do these kinds of projects now. The issue is, and some of you may be aware of this, that ownership of the property. We've talked with the Allegheny Land Trust, and they were involved in a meeting with us, and they suggested that they might be interested, but they really didn't want to get involved if there were any environmental issues related to the property. And the U.S. Steel, who owns the property that would be necessary to do this, has suggested that they would not allow any environmental due diligence to occur. So the question would be then, what's liability? And that's how this discussion of redevelopment authority came up. And I said, well, I worked for redevelopment authority for 27 years. And which I'll give you a bit of background. I was with the Allegheny County Economic Development Department and the redevelopment authority. I managed development for them up until 2007, when I left and went into private practice. But so there's plenty of context there. The redevelopment authority could be an entity. Some of the talk that we've had was related to nonprofits, and I said, well, redevelopment authority can take property and not, under Act 3, which is a liability legislation that passed in the mid-90s. Redevelopment authority doesn't really step into the liability chain per se. They can hold the property and prepare it for redevelopment and then move it on for private development purposes. And state provides a mechanism, what's called land recycling program, better known as Act Two, where property can be taken through there after it's characterized, the environmental risk is determined, and there are a lot of different ways of approaching it, but basically, you come out the other end with liability protection from the DEP, which then you can convey that property, and the next owner doesn't incur liability, which may be a mechanism under which the land trust might want to get involved if there are environmental issues with that property. Our research has indicated that there may well be because of the property's past use related to the Warden mine apparently, where there may well have been some beehive coke ovens on the property, so that might be a concern. My experience is that there's really not too many things that would preclude that property being used for that purpose. But again, it's conjecture on my part at this point. But so the redevelopment authority concept came up, and the redevelopment authority, I guess that there was a law passed about a year ago that allows municipalities to create redevelopment authorities. I was involved in one up in Greenville where the creating of it is pretty easy. The devil's always in the details, but it's a mechanism to provide for a way for economic development to occur that the municipality itself, which has limitations in doing those kind of things, property ownership transfer, that sort of thing, could be useful.
I have a question about the Ward Line project. So, with the way that it worked, if the redevelopment authority was created and then the property was held by it for purposes of redevelopment, at that time that it's holding it, but before it's turned over, the authority itself can do the environmental testing and find out, I guess, at that time if there's issues, and then either do reclamation or whatever in coordination with the DEP.
Yes.
And then fix it. Well, what if, okay, so what if the cost of fixing it is too high? What happens to the property at that point? What if we got a hot potato, right? Like, we go in there, we take it, we do the drilling, and all of a sudden it's a $40 million fix to reclamate. Like, what do you do with it then?
Well, I mean, that's kind of always the risk.
Yeah.
There is an unknown here, which is why no one privately is gonna take the property on.
Right.
No bank would lend on it,
Well, and no, like even the land trust, that nobody
Right.
wants to touch it. Yeah, I've been involved in this for years, unfortunately, the design of it was all good, the
Yeah.
funding of it was actually all pretty good, it all was lined up, and then we had this conference call with the officials from US Steel, and it was all good. They're like, oh yeah, we'll give you the property, no problem. And then it was like, oh, but the only thing is, like, we don't want you to do any testing prior to taking ownership, and we want you to basically release us
Right.
at the sale if you take ownership.
Right.
So I was like,
And I had
It
a
was like
similar
a-
experience with US Steel
Yeah.
where, we had purchased Terry Furnace property, which
Yeah.
they had sold to Park Corporation way back when, and with an indemnification.
Right.
It was prior to this Act Two that I talked about, which was passed in the mid-90s, and that was the way US Steel sold property. And, we, as an industrial development authority, passed, the Duquesne and the Eastwood sites under a similar scenario back in the 80s. But I can honestly say that in my experience, and the property's sitting there for how many years with nothing having happened?
Yeah.
The likelihood of an environmental disaster on the property is pretty slim. If it hasn't happened yet, it probably won't, but
I think the concern is, I guess, the condition of the soil and what would have to be done for reclamation, like, once you do the drill, I'm not an
But
expert.
typically, under current law, now, the land recycling program was created in the 90s. It was under Act Two, which was environmental legislation that provided for a process to allow properties that were heretofore undevelopable because of these concerns of environmental conditions that would, through a risk-based approach, rather than going in and digging soil up and hauling it away, you characterize the property, you determine what the reuse is, and then the remediation is commensurate with whatever the intended reuse is, daycare is one, if it's an industrial facility, it's a completely different scenario. And in my experience, there's very few properties that you can't get through active. And some of them pretty toxic, we've gone through, that process with, mono property in Hazelwood, and you see it's being redeveloped. Really, LTD site, Southside Works, Terry Furnace, all these sites, so they were much bigger concerns than what we're looking at.
Just to hammer down a little bit further. So, the question is, the authority gives us what additional protections from already what we have, right? We have a verbal agreement with US Steel that they'll give it to us. At that point, we can do whatever testing we want. We can certainly do reclamation at that point if we want, because we own the property, we'd be required to probably, more than likely, if we find out there's a problem. So what is the protection? What does the authority structure allow us to do with that property?
Well, it can hold property indefinitely. I mean, redeveloper can take the property, you own it forever, and not have any liability
Associated with.
associated with it. I think that the advantage to that is that obviously it insulates the township from that sort of thing, but it also provides a mechanism for, future economic development endeavors that you might want.
Well, I think, I'm not against, I think the redevelopment authority, in terms of general use for blight and everything else, that's a totally separate issue, there's nothing, that's all good.
Now, there's all this context here, I guess.
Yeah, there's like the two reasons, right? One is that site, what we can do with it there, that's like, then it's just the general structure of having a redevelopment authority and what it can do for fighting blight and other aspects.
So one thing I would say is that under no circumstances should you ever take property without any sort of environmental due diligence. The phase one gives you innocent landowner protection, that protection goes forward when you transfer the property. So that's really important to do that under any circumstances. So, I mean, US Steel can suggest that you can't do it, but, it's something you really should do under any circumstances. Now, phase two work, they might say, look, if you find RECs which recognize environmental conditions related to its previous use, which based on our research, probably they'll be there, then, you're gonna have to do something. But, additional investigation, groundwater investigation, soil, and then determine from there what your next course of action would be. Based upon the intended reuse of the property, I really don't see any issues probably coming up. You never know, but the likelihood is that we won't have the actual development of these ponds would conceivably be part of the remediation. Because under Act 2, the development can be part of the remediation, just as long as, if you find a soil issue and you can, soil caps, covers, those kinds of things, parking lots, even buildings have been used for remediation measures. So these ponds and a little bit of soil cover, could easily handle that. But yeah, it's all conjecture on my part at this point, but I think based on my experience, it's a pretty likely scenario.
Typically, the redevelopment authority would take a piece of property like this, get it, clean it up, make it usable, and like you said, daycare,
Right.
mill, whatever. In this case, it would never get to the next stage, because the idea for the property is to clean water.
Right,
So
but
that stage-
the issue that precipitated this discussion was with the land trust and their concern. If you took it through this process that I talked about and provided that, then they would conceivably be willing to take it on.
It's just different because it never gets to the state except where you're gonna put a
Exactly,
sewer or something, it
exactly.
stays at that level where
Right.
it's cleaning water. So,
Yeah, and the property's been there for, 100 years without any issues, so. Other than the rust-colored water flowing through it.
And I would just like to add, just for the group where this is at, the Warden Mine has a mine discharge in the area, Nichols Hill and Douglas Run Road. From there, the creek turns orange. down past Driscoll's, enters the creek behind the bike trail, in roughly the area of Sutersville Bridge. This property that we're talking about, the U.S. still owns, is basically between Sutersville Bridge and bike trail of the river. It's roughly a 13-acre tract, that they are willing to give up. And the idea is that these ponds that Mark is referring to act as a filtration system, clean the water, and then it enters, would enter the river clean at that point.
And the LA Land Trust has been involved in these projects. One of those is in Upper St. Clair, which is
With
a community asset.
Yeah.
Into an asset,
And then we have an environmental firm that has prepared some plans, pro bono, so to speak, Head Environmental. Those plans have been out there for, what, probably a decade, Matt?
A long time. Since I've been, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with this on planning and some preliminary discussions, so the plans are there, we just need a path to the property.
Yeah, the grant funding's there to do the project. Now, there's reclamation, there's not reclamation, there's cleaning, and I don't know if it's dredging, whatever they call it, every 5 years or so, I think you go in and clean out the soils. But the original construction for the ponds, again, it's really interesting, you know, they flow the water through, and each pond gets cleaner and cleaner until it comes up and out the back end.
And one of the issues with this one is that this property is not right where the issue begins. And so there would have to be some mechanism to get the water down through that, which is piping.
Other than this, what else can the redevelopment authority help us with some of these properties as far as what?
Well, that's, you talked about, I mean, I think that one of the, land banks are one thing that the state, authorized several years ago to address blight. Among the things that they really didn't provide for is a way to acquire these properties. I mean, they can acquire for various means, donations and all those kind of things, but, in the end, if you have a piece of property that's encumbered for 100 years with liens and mortgages and whatever, I mean, you have to have a mechanism for putting that title. There's a little contract, but the redevelopment has tools available that can do that as well. Maybe a little more exceedingly, but, that's one of the things. Also, just in terms of economic development projects going forward, having a local ability to affect that. The county is one thing, but the county, their focus isn't most of the county. It's just something you could find uses for, believe me.
So for some of the new commissioners, this is something we've been talking about for years. We have hundreds of properties, like you described, past due taxes, vacant, the township has to cut the grass, we're not getting any taxes from them. What do? Land bank, redevelopment authority, eminent domain, and we've been talking for a long time.
County vacant property program.
Exactly, now we want to actually do something about it, we have someone that actually understands it, knows it in-house here, so. Do you know what it would cost roughly to get a redevelopment authority started?
I don't know the specific cost. The process is actually pretty simple. But,
Matt, is that something you-
Yeah, the incorporation of the authority isn't, that's not wrong at all. Like, filing out paperwork with the Department of State is
Right.
easy peasy. I think you're in on the issue, the concern I would have as a resident. Those startup costs to do the acquisitions, do the legal work, to have people go and acquire these properties, to identify them. That's gonna be a cost, and I don't know what your budget, and it's something you guys should talk about in terms of your budget. But,
We haven't budgeted anything for 2023,
Well, that's-
so.
yeah, that's-
but
the
we
one
got
thing is the
the-
redevelopment authority can go out and find money.
Right.
They can get grant funding and other sources of money, donations and that kind of thing, foundations. So there's resources out there, and then ultimately what you want to be is self-sustaining.
over time, right, the idea would be that it could work itself.
Right.
To pay for itself. You're gonna have some things in front of us, so that would be my concern.
I think for 2023, I'd like to set up a redevelopment authority committee with some of the commissioners to really look to go forward for maybe 2024, trying to start this. So, do you agree with that, Glenn?
No, I don't, because, this grant funding through PDP, through the federal government, it's not gonna last, and this needs to be taken care of. We need to get moving on this. There's billions of dollars out there, but, it could be gone by 24. I really think this needs to move forward much faster than that. You there?
Yeah, I'm just looking around. What's thoughts on this?
I'm involved with Clarendon, with some things over there, and if they, and I'm not actually Clarendon, but if they can have a redevelopment for you, I think Elizabeth House can have a redevelopment.
And I've worked with Clarendon Redevelopment Authority, and, yeah, they were third class cities, so they had redevelopment for these decaying Clarendon. They're limited because of their resources, and, you know, they have a redevelopment authority sometimes in name over them, that really isn't functioning. Duquesne's is functioning somewhat, but, it's got a lot of issues, but I think that they've leaned on the county's redevelopment authority funds when they needed help on things, which is something that the township could do too. That's definitely an option, but having that ability to do these things, I think, would be important. I helped to establish it up in Greenville, up in Mercer County, they're an Act 47 community. It's just in its infancy, but, we're finding that there's a lot of possibilities, and there is money out there.
So my question is, can somebody speculate on what the startup cost would be?
Yeah, see, I couldn't, I don't know offhand, honestly, I don't represent it, it's one of the authorities I don't represent, you know, I represent sanitary authorities, water authorities, I don't represent any redevelopment authorities. My thought on it is, I agree with Kyle that we want to act quickly, but at the same time, I think it would make sense to investigate and make sure you're setting it up properly, because just saying, okay, let's file the paperwork, and now we have authority, like you said, then you have, you know, a bunch of people sitting around the room looking at each other, they have no money to spend, they go, okay, where's the grants at? We heard there's grants, and people are like, I don't know, and like, so I think if you structure it and you do like a committee to investigate, I'm not saying it has to wait until 2024, but I think if you can look at, investigate, where is the money? How much can the township afford? Where's the other money, the sources of income? Okay, what are our main goals? Okay, the Ward 9 issue is one, you know, blighted houses, this one, you know, do all the legwork so that, this is my opinion now, when you set it up, you're ready to hit the ground and actually work, because that's how it's gonna become self-sustaining. When you have the resources and the goals that you can follow as a board, that's how you're gonna move forward. Otherwise, you're just gonna be sitting there looking at each other and being very reactionary. That's my
So
opinion.
is the money only available if we have that established already, or can we apply for monies to establish it?
You're talking about the money for the, like, the AMD issue?
Well, I mean, like, even.
We're talking about to fix the property.
Right.
We're talking about to set up the authority.
So the authority,
Two different
I think
things.
that one of the resources that you should prevail upon is the state's Department of Community and Economic Development, because they can help you understand some of the questions that, Mr. Pierce brought up. Pardon me?
Do you have contact information
Yes.
for them? Can you send that to Greg? You do?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
And,
You've done the right thing.
they can help you, you know, with some of those questions that you're coming up with. I mean, and I can help too. I mean,
And my old
sort of
firm,
operational standpoint.
in my old firm, Papernick and Geske actually has represented the redevelopment authority of Allegheny County for a long, long
I know
time.
Steve very well.
Steve Papernick, yeah, so, I mean, I may be able to
Right.
garner some information that way too. Like, I never got involved with it, I
Yeah.
didn't, they always did it, but it might be another resource.
Yeah, Steve was our solicitor with the redevelopment for there.
I have to say, this Ward 9 property scares me. Obviously for work, I'm a corporate banker, I go to phase 1, phase 2 reports all the time, I read them, you know, every week. If we take this property, and it's more than we think, we could be screwed. I mean, it could.
Again, Dan, it's not, we are not taking the property, the redevelopment authority will acquire it. It takes, as Mark just explained, it takes away the liability.
And to say that the property as it sits is not a concern.
Okay.
You know, and I think that taking it through a phase 2 investigation, determine exactly what you're dealing with. I mean, you can make decisions at that point. If you find out that you've got something that's bigger than you wanna do, or take on, and find out that the issues are greater than would preclude you from using the property for what you want to use it for. I mean, that's,
So-
your decisions to make at that point.
We set the redevelopment authority, we take over this property, God forbid, it costs more to fix than we like. We just shut down the authority and.
Well, you know, I mean, honestly, you can leave the property the way it is.
Just leave it.
Yeah, I
But
mean.
it's under the authority's name, so you basically have to shut down that authority, or just leave it
No,
and start a
no,
new one or
it's
something
not
else.
necessary. I mean, the redevelopment for Allegheny County is probably had for, 60 or 70 years.
Yeah.
That have done nothing, that sometimes don't even know they are.
I just think of the liability, that's all I'm concerned about, so. Any other comments or questions on this?
I have a question. So, and there might not be an easy answer. A redevelopment authority, let's say for like the acid mine drainage, would it make sense that the same redevelopment authority would also handle, like vacant
Yeah.
lots? Would it be smart to have the same redevelopment authority handle all, or would you want us to have two redevelopment?
No, you
authorities?
just have one.
Just one.
And you can do all that.
Okay, that's my question.
I got one other thing, Dan. This is a project that I'd love to see happen. It's not something that's gonna happen,
So do I, trust me.
it's not something that's gonna happen in the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Hopefully maybe in the next 3 years. But I've seen this work in other communities and it would be fantastic. Really, the catch-22 is we have somebody willing to give up the property, we have somebody willing to take it, and we have somebody that designed the thing. We just gotta get
There's money out there.
And there's money out there to get, but we can't get the money without a property owner. So, we just gotta connect the dots.
Okay,
And
I think our next step is.
This was sort of a creative solution, I thought.
I think you should have a committee.
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion, I think you should have a committee to identify what exactly we're gonna do, and then talk about where the funding's gonna come from. Because, I mean, I don't think, I mean, it's up to you guys, I'll do whatever you want.
Kyle, do you wanna have that up?
Yeah, we already basically have a committee with Mark Kane, myself, Mark Baker, Tom Dockery from Allegheny Land Trust, as well as Bob Hedden from Bob Hedden Environmental. So there's your basis of your committee right there.
And I think if
And
you guys.
one of the developers talked about.
Yeah, I think if you guys come up with where the funding's coming from and those types of things, I think that's all you really need to talk about, at least initially. Like, where's the.
Okay.
Right?
All right, as long as I can report back to the steering committee that I just mentioned, as long as I can report back to them, that the board is willing to look at this further closely and soon, then that's what we'll do.
Okay,
I might also add that, I've contacted US Steel again, and I have, several of those folks that are, waiting to hear from us. So this is all good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
I have a question. So on that redevelopment authority, how's the administrative structure done normally for that?
Well, you would appoint a board, to the redevelopment authority and,
It would be obviously separate
be
from,
separate
from this
the
board.
township commissioners.
And are they normally paid or are they?
Typically not, no.
Okay.
No, you're gonna have a board, and whenever we get incorporated, I have to put the names of the initiating board members on there. That gets filed with the Department of State. Again, the part of actually doing the incorporation, starting the authority is like, super easy. It's like a form paper that you just file with the state, and then it's started with that initial board. But again, they would typically appoint their own solicitor. You have to talk about whether or not you're gonna have a secretary or somebody that's gonna be processing paperwork, because, again, the devil is in the details. These takings and things aren't simple. I don't even do them, that's what I'm saying, because they're very time consuming. I mean, they're form documents, but there's a lot of timing things, and you have to notice certain people, there's a whole process involved in all that. So there's a lot of legal time that will ultimately get spent doing all of that. So again, you wanna know where that funding's coming from, because if you appoint a board and a solicitor who's coming to meetings and then starting to prepare paperwork for takings and all these other things, and also if you have reclamation issues, like, where's all that money coming from? That's my only concern, is making sure you understand that before you just starting the bore, because that starting the bore is not a problem, I can do that, you know, anytime. I think if you lay it out though, and you have a roadmap, and then say, okay, we're ready to go, here's where the money's coming from, here's what we're gonna do, then you start it and then go from there, that would be my suggestion.
And if I could add one thing, just from a model standpoint, the redevelopment authority of Allegheny County has no staff. All their staff is provided by the county. So they have a board, and they have a solicitor, and they own a bunch of property. And they do have revenue, but, you know, they've been established for a long time, obviously, but, so in terms of staffing this entity, I mean, there's contractual ways you can do those kinds of things, there are consultants that can help you get it started. I'm not suggesting myself for it all, but I'm just saying there are people out there that do that sort of thing, that can help that process early on, that won't be extremely expensive over time, and then it can evolve. I mean, I think that at some point, you know, you want it obviously to be self-sustaining, and perhaps have its own management and that type of thing, but I think that you're way ahead of yourself in that way. But, I think it's, you know, like Matt says, it's gonna be, you know, the details of this thing are really where it's gonna be, gonna define this.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, I just want to mention one thing too. Thank you for appointing me to the planning commission. I've been on since September. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, next, data sharing, University of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, Solicitor Rakunas.
Yeah, so this is the data sharing, I'm sorry, the chief isn't here, because this is more his baby than it is mine. But there's something in conjunction with the University of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County where they want to come in and review our, police records in order to look at, I think racially biased and discriminatory practices, to make sure that you're not, to make sure that you're above board. They reached out to us because we are, I think, the second largest in land area as far as police departments, in the county, so they were interested in our data. Again, the chief would have more to say on it. I reviewed the contract, I didn't have any problem with it, I mean, everything is protected and confidential, it doesn't get disclosed, but it actually has a 30-day out provision, so if for any reason the chief of the department isn't happy with the way things are going, it's an out. But I know that the chief feels that it's something, that can actually protect us in the future, so if they do these studies, and he feels very strongly that it's not gonna turn out any problems, then if something is alleged down the road, we can turn back to the study and say, oh no, there weren't any issues because we already have looked into all these potential issues at this time. So I know he was in favor of it, again, I was in favor of the contract, so if the board's okay with it, we can put that on the agenda for January.
Well, Chief Holnick,
Yeah, he'll be able to speak
more
more to it.
Speak more to it.
Yeah.
So.
Now, when this data sharing, this is, we wouldn't be paying for it.
No.
They wouldn't be paying us.
Yeah, no, it's-
And when it's sharing, it's a one-way share.
Yeah, it's one way, it's all remains strictly confidential, yep.
There's no names given, it's just.
Yeah.
I meant one-way share, or us sharing with that not sharing.
That's
with
correct,
us.
yeah, it's one way that way, you're right.
The chief said it was a positive, he said it was a good thing for us to do.
And do they give us feedback on where we're at with that, or not?
That's not in the contract, but I assume that it is. I mean, there's findings, obviously, at the end of it. I don't know what they do in terms of while they're actually doing the data collection. That would be.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if we're gonna go through that to share with it, and I know they're trying to get it, but we should reap some benefit to it to say, hey, are we on the right path? Or is there something else we have to tweak?
Yeah, and I think that's what the end result is at the end. They do tell you at the very end, hey, these things look good, there's no problems here, hey, maybe you need to tweak this. I think that's all part of what you get at the end of the program.
Any other questions? Thanks, Matt. Next is sanitation treatment costs, Commissioner Watt.
All right, everybody have their pens out? So, first off, I'd like to direct you to the documents that Greg gave you. First one being the checking account. The second one being the 2022 budget versus actual. So at the bottom of the checking account, you'll see a line item marked sanitary, 579, 560. That money is what's currently in the checking account, and it includes all funds that were carried over from 2021. The second item, sanitary capital, was an account created a long time ago before I got on the board for any projects. That's never been touched, but it is still available for sanitary. So just keep that in mind, that's the actual amount in our checking account at this point. If you want to do some quick math in your head with a $5 million, $6 million budget, that's basically 1 month's worth of being able to pay our bills. So the second page, the second document that I'd like you to look at is the current profit and loss budget versus actual. Line item 4010. If you look at line item 4010, we currently have collected that amount of money, the budgeted amount, but the most important thing is we are currently, as listed totally in the bottom of sewer charge revenue, we're down $607,000 in collections this year. Now, it's not quite that dire because that does not include December's deposits for legal tax. The sewer charge revenues will be about $250,000 additional. The online payments will be about $100,000 additional, which takes $350 off that $607. But we're still $257,000 short on what we expected to collect for 2022. Now, out of $5,159, that's not a bad guess, but we're still short. We don't have anything we will not have anything to carry through for sure. Now scroll all the way down. Well, I'm scrolling. You guys look all the way down to the very bottom of the page. What you see down there is the net ordinary income. Net ordinary income. Our net income is $53,000, where we're expecting to have a $1 million surplus. We are therefore down about $1 million on our projected. That's due to slightly less income and much greater expenses than we could have possibly anticipated. Does anybody have any questions on that before I continue? Okay, so the net result of all of this is that we obviously did a 2023 budget for sanitary, and the entire budget was, revenue was projected at $6,700,000, that rounding out. And to compare that, the 22 projected income was $5,159,000. Now that increase is 1.5 plus million, and that included the mandated raise for Penvest. Penvest had mandated that we increase the sanitary rates at $13.45 per customer. That was a little over $1 million increase, plus $500,000 in preventive maintenance. So that total of $6,700,000 in projected income for 2023 includes the Penvest increase as well as $500,000 for preventive maintenance. What it does not include is this horrible rate increase that Pennsylvania American Water just received from Public Utility Commission. They received an increase of approximately 60%. That's going to greatly affect our budget. We need to do another increase on top of what we've already projected for 2023. Are there any questions about that so far? So I've asked.
I have a question, Kyle.
I've asked KLH to get involved here because this has become extremely complicated to try to figure out how to go about this. We can still get this done. Our budget has to be in, the 20th of January, I believe. And so we can still amend this budget to reflect an increase in cost. And so I would ask the board to have any questions that are necessary, but the increase that we projected was based on $10.75%, $10.75 per 1,000 gallons of treatment with, beginning at zero gallons. The increase that PA American has received is at $16.86. It's crazy. We need to figure it out. I don't know what kind of money that this is gonna have to increase on top of what it's already increased, but it's gonna be over $1 million for sure.
I agree, Kyle. I mean, we're gonna have to do something quick on this, and we're gonna have to increase the usage rate. And there's no way around it. And PA American Water hit us with this, what, a week and a half ago?
December 8th.
December 8th, yeah.
As a
Oh,
public,
it's effective,
I'm sorry.
effective on January 23rd.
And not just us, they said everybody that they deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle or Kevin, I have a question. As a public utility company, don't we have any type of protection of how much they can increase it?
Matt saying that.
Yeah, so they have to approach the Public Utility Commission. There's a process and a hearing that happens in front of that anytime that they want to do a rate increase. So there's a process they go through, but as I understand it, it's up to the Utility Commission on whether or not to grant those increases. So, and I don't know that they ever say no. That's my understanding, because they are a public utility. Our sanitary is not. We're not a public utility.
Is there like some sort of time frame that they're allowed to do? Because I mean, obviously this is a quick turnaround, at least from our end. Is there any type of action that we can say and say, hey, you know what?
Yeah, I don't know if
Until
there's.
2024, because we've already done all our work. It's not us that didn't do
Yeah.
the due diligence.
I think, Kyle, we talked about this, and when we met with Jackie, she said there was gonna be an increase, but she had never said that it was gonna be this much, and she kinda let us know that.
Oh, Denny, who's Jackie?
Am I speaking right?
Jackie
person?
McCurdy,
Yeah.
From PA American Water?
correct.
Okay.
I mean, you would think there would be something sort of protection, because I mean, what's the difference if they come in and say, you know what, February it's going up another
Well,
They only did once a year.
60%?
they have to get their approvals through the Public Utility Commission. So it's a totally separate entity that has to actually approve this. Unlike us, we're not governed by the PUC we're only governed by the act itself. And so we could do rate increases all day and all night too. There's nothing preventing us from doing that other than the act's requirement that our rate increases be quote unquote reasonable. So our rate increase have to be justified. And so when you do a rate increase, you typically have a reason, such as this pass along, or you have the engineers do a rate study in order to justify what your increase is going to be. So there's nothing preventing us from continuing to increase rates as long as it's reasonable, and I don't think there's anything stopping them as long as they get the approval from the commission itself, who is supposed to be the regulators, right? They're the ones that are supposed to be looking out for the consumers, and whenever the utility comes to them and says, hey, we'd like to do this rate increase of 60%, you know, the commission, that board, that commission should be investigating that and saying yes or no based on whatever the factors are they're presenting. I don't know, because we're not involved in that.
So, did you have a discussion with them, their reasoning behind it?
No, and they're not gonna give you one either. This is the PUC, and we're not gonna get that changed.
Kyle, are you recommending, you think that we raise the sewage rates for usage to match PA American Water's, what they're charging us?
Well, this is where it becomes complicated, Dan, because, we have 5,200 customers. 1,400 of them already go to PA in McKeesport. 1,170 of them go to Elizabeth Borough. Well, Elizabeth Borough Municipal Authority is being purchased by PAWC, so sometime in the third quarter, when that takes effect, those rate increase will be effective there. When the pump stations are completed in approximately May, we will be sending all the rest of our customers, including Sutersville, Sewickley, to McKeesport, and that 1686 will apply to all of them. So it's not like this has to be done on January 1st, but it has to be studied and considered ASAP, because remember, all those entities, all they do is they send us a bill and we pay it, and then it's up to us to collect it. So that's where the rub is. They get paid, we have to go figure out how to get the money off of the residents. Is that clear? Does that make sense?
Yeah. What's everybody's thoughts on this?
I still think there should be some sort of legal aspect of this. I
But
mean,
by the time that gets taken care of.
Or at
even
least
if there is a
investigate.
path,
I can look at what the sort of appeal procedures are from the PUC. I have some initial concerns because we weren't at the original, whatever the original hearing is. I don't, even, we don't even know that exists. We don't really partake in that because that's not part of our process. But I'll look at it and see what I can find.
I mean, don't we have an agreement since we're sending that to them? Is there like some sort of agreement that you can only raise it 3% per year or 10% per year or
No,
whatever? I mean, anytime you sell something or do something.
Yeah, there was with McKeesport. So when McKeesport sold it to PA American, there was a provision in there that said they would hold rates for 3 years or something. I don't know offhand, but it was a certain period of time they agreed to hold rates and not raise them. But once that time frame's over,
Well, I think that's the problem with it, right? It's almost like they're gonna be the one-stop shop that can control every rate that's possible, right?
Kevin might be able to address this in a more intelligent way than I can, but I believe it was, Act 12 that allowed public utility commissions such as PAWC wastewater side to spread their costs over all of their ratepayers. And I think that's the reason that they can raise it to this level, because they are actually just spreading their costs, so to speak. Is that basically right, Kevin?
Yes, yeah, you're on the right track with that.
So that's your answer about being protected, because that was my assumption as well, that they couldn't raise them more than 10% or 15 or whatever the number used to be. But that's no longer the case. And you can thank your legislators for that. They put that through.
Any other comments?
So my last comment on this is basically what I'm asking for is for the board to allow KLH to do a rate study and move this forward over the course of the next 30 to 60 days at the cost of whatever. And we need to have another rate increase.
Would we need to adjust the budget prior to that being done though?
Yeah. Now, I can make some guesstimates at that for budget purposes, because remember, budget's just a budget plus or minus 10%. So yes, I can make a guess at it.
Somewhere in the budget is the is it about 1064, 1065, I believe the figure, 1067, 1075. So you just substitute
I mean, if we're getting charged
16, whatever into that.
16 something, we should almost.
Well,
raise
wait a
the-
second. So wait a second. You're confusing the rate increase with that. So the rate increase that we made was $10.75, starting at 0 gallons. So there's no longer a tiered system, it's all 1075. And and then also a $3 raise on the minimum from 48 to 51. And when legal tax modeled that rate increase, that increased the budget accordingly, almost $1.5 million. So that's what accounted for the Penvest loan, because we are by ordinance mandated to do that, as well as $500,000 in there for maintenance and improvements. This would have to be totally separate, and I can't begin to figure out exactly what it should be. That's why I'm asking for KLH to get involved, but I can make a guess at it at $1 million.
I mean, my opinion is that's the point we're at, we need somebody to figure that out. Like Kyle just said.
Yeah, is that something you guys can do quickly for us?
Yes.
At no cost to the township? Okay, maybe.
Greatly reduced, sure.
We have to figure out something here, we have to figure that quick.
When you say quick turnaround, is that end of January, end of February, when is that?
Well, so the answer to that question involves where our budget is as far as submitting it to, is it DCED that we submit to, Greg?
Yes, eventually, yeah.
Okay, and that drop dead date is January 20, as I remember.
No, it has to be adopted by, it has to be adopted by the 31st of the year. I can't remember the report it goes on, it's longer than January, I think.
Okay, well, then we would have to go through, would we have to go through re-advertising and so forth and so on?
If I recall the regulations correctly, you're allowed a 10% overall increase of the entire budget, or a 25% increase of an individual line item, without having to re-advertise or re-motion.
This would be
Okay.
beyond 10%.
So we could do a 25% increase over the, or income, and that would cover us under that, so we wouldn't have to go through that whole advertising process again. Does that sound about right, Matt?
I'm sorry, I was looking at the PUC appeal process.
That's okay, that's okay. 10% of the overall budget would be 670,000, that's not enough. So, maybe not enough, I don't know. Or 25% of an individual line item, well, we could use line item, 4010, which is gonna be 4 million. So 25% of that would be our million right there. I think it's doable, that we can get this all done by the end of the month. Kevin, do you think we could do this in 30 days, get this rate structure figured out?
Sure.
See how enthusiastic you are.
Yeah, I think as long as, Greg and I share information pretty well, he's gonna become my new best friend, and we'll, get it taken care of.
All right, well, thank you, because now I can sleep better. This has really been keeping me up.
Any other comments on this before we go move on? Okay, thanks, Cal.
Thank you.
Next is MS4 remedies, Greg Butler.
Thank you, President Poyer. Kevin, you may want to chime in on this as I start my introduction. The reason I took this on here is because we haven't talked about it much as a group. We have obviously a consent decree that removes sediment from our stormwater. I believe it's 70,000 pounds per year. And KLH has designed some solutions, which I think he brought a couple with you to discuss, or maybe not. But on the share drive, I neglected to put everything on there this month. I apologize. But on there, if you were able to look at it, is the document that KLH created that shows. Oh, was it not? Okay. There's 15 possible solutions that were designed by a couple engineers at KLH. And their request is that we go through them. They're all ranked by approximate cost and approximate sediment reduction capabilities, and color coded, and it makes it really easy to kind of look through it. Included in this is a book that shows actual photos of the area that would be treated. This all has to be looked at and decided upon to some extent by pretty soon, because we have to satisfy this requirement by November of next year, if I'm wrong, correct me, Kevin. So I did my homework on this with just my own opinions. I picked 8 of the 15 solutions based on those different criteria that I thought would be the best bang for the buck. And my total, according to the estimated cost, came to about $850,000. So when I first introduced this, all 15 of them came to 1.4 billion, but I did state that we wouldn't need to necessarily implement all of those. And with that, I forget what my sediment reduction was, but it was well above the 70,000 or 72,000. So again, my intention of putting stuff on the agenda always is just to keep it in front of you guys. I did email the sanitary, we don't really have a stormwater committee per se, but I emailed the sanitary committee. And to kind of say, hey, let's get together and start discussing this. So we haven't done that yet. I just want to keep it moving.
Greg, which 8, you said 8, which 8 did you pick? Because I was kind of looking at the list too. I was kind of looking at the overall rank, kind of pick and choose, but
Yeah.
which 8 did you pick?
I could just tell you by name, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be fine. They have it listed by project name and then so on and so forth.
So I picked Stony Brook Park 1, that's a range Lane Hill Detention Pond, Phillips Lane Detention Pond, Grouse Drive Detention Pond, Cedar Drive Wet Pond retrofit. There's actually 3 of those. Those are wet ponds that were developed put in there by the developer of Fox Run, but never maintained. I don't know if they ever work to their full capacity, but, they're there, and I think we should kind of retrofit them and get them going. That's kind of low hanging fruit.
Do the developers still on those?
I don't even know who that is.
Farmland?
I don't know if we do that or not. When was that time? When was that neighborhood?
Yeah, Pearson, that's the way.
Was that something that wasn't done properly, or just something that needs, upgraded?
I think a lot of that problem is what's causing that problem.
I think they may have operated, I mean, they may have functioned at one point, but how long ago was that?
I've been there 17 years.
Yeah, so they never been touched.
The problem with that is I think the appropriate agreements when that development went in were never put into place. Like they never did a formal developers agreement. They never had a maintenance agreement for those ponds, which is something you want to have in place. Because again, those are things that need to be maintained and cleaned out, whatever. And I don't think any of that happened back. This is all, 20 years ago, but
Kevin, since these are mandated to us, is there grant funding for this?
No. MS4.
That's not the answer I wanted.
Well, I was trying to, MS4 itself is an unfunded mandate. So they don't say, hey, please reduce your sediment, here we'll help you. You have to go chase that money through a variety of programs that are out there, including the small water and sewer fund, H2O and things like that. You could probably do something with CITF and GEDTF. Those were through the Allegheny County Economic Development. So there are funds out there to do this work, but you're sort of a little bit behind. Now, Greg, I don't know if you finished out your list. Were you gonna do all 3 Cedar, did you suggest all 3 Cedar
All
Drives?
3, yeah. And then the last one was Broadlawn Drive.
Yeah,
Detention
okay.
Pond.
Okay.
Those were my picks. I don't know how you want to move forward. We are running out of time. This is a 20-plus year mandate, right? So, I think MS4 started in 2004, from what I remember.
Yeah, this current cycle, it renews, you renew your permit every 5 years, so, yeah, this is.
I got a couple of comments. I guess the first one has to do with, maybe this is a question for Kevin. If he can look at his other municipalities and see if, has DEP come down on anybody else yet for not moving along?
So, they say that you're potentially audited every year. But I'd say at best case, you're audited every 2 years. We don't currently have anybody that has had the sort of damp leaves dropped on them. So I can't really say that that's happened a lot. We just really try not to do that, for our clients.
Okay, yeah, I get that. So the other thing I would point out to the board that, we're currently under a consent order for our wastewater side. So we are definitely on the radar with DEP, so we really shouldn't kick the can on this stuff. I guess my second comment has to do with the assignment of MS4 to the sanitary committee. I've been using a lot of my brain power on all this stuff, as you can imagine, and quite frankly, I can't wrap my head around this one, so I'm gonna ask somebody else on this committee to step up and say, hey, I'll be in charge. Or any of the other board commissioners that wants to step in and say, I'll be in charge, but it cannot be me.
I'll take care of this one.
That was Mark Kay.
Yes.
It was.
Thank you, Dave.
Do you guys want to keep MS4 under the sanitary committee, or do you think it should be a separate committee?
I think it should be separate. What's your thoughts, Kyle?
I think it should be separate.
It'll be separate in 2023. Okay. Anything else on this?
No, just want to keep it on the table.
Okay, I think, Mark, your committee should, come to us early in January and kind of figure out what the first steps are with Greg's plan here, and we'll work on the funding for it. Good, thank you.
I'll have that document loaded on this, on the Commissioner Drive.
Okay, thanks.
I guess my other question is, who's my three?
I'll get with you, let's get up to date, and let's figure out, I think Danny might be on that committee, so.
That's mine. I can't even.
Next is, Ray's Way Building and Fire Training, Greg.
So I have a lot of things on the agenda, I apologize. My intention again is,
I missed over here.
yeah, I just want to keep it on the, I want to get to the resolution at some point. We recently, not so recently, maybe a couple months ago, had a building donated to us by the Elizabeth Forward School District. It's a building on Moray Lane, it's the old Ray's Way Bar and Restaurant. So we finally own it, and when it first came to my attention as interim manager, I thought our intention was to use it as a extended parking lot for Toilet Field. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
That was my intention. Yeah.
In the meantime, though, the fire department is extremely interested in using it for training. I was able to go in that building, it's completely filled with clutter. I mean, it's just filled. In the basement, there's just a path that kind of goes through the basement, and there's just stuff everywhere up to the ceiling. The main bar area, the ceiling has collapsed due to a hole up in the roof. It's been exposed for quite a while. And I keep getting calls, I mean, reasonably so, by the fire chiefs and by some of the firefighters asking what we want to do with it. They wanted our building inspector, Chris House, to go in, but he doesn't really want to go in because he knows there's raccoons in there. He's just kind of concerned about some of the viruses or diseases that come off of their feces, which is, respectable. It's just a very, very, very cluttered building with a big hole in the roof. So
So basically what you're saying, Greg, is the fire departments would like to use it to burn it down for training?
it's not no burning. It would be like rescue training, rescue somebody in the house since it's already furnished.
What's our liability?
That's mad, I guess.
Yeah, so they had actually approached us prior to us acquiring that property, and the board discussed it, and I had told them at that time, absolutely, we don't own the property, we can't even give them access if we wanted to. So they knew that we were trying to acquire it in order to make that parking lot, extended parking lot for the field. I had said at that time that, hey, if we acquire the property, it's gonna be up to the commissioners. Now, obviously, we take on liability with that. If somebody goes in there and falls through the floor and dies, probably, not good for us. So, I mean, we could do it with, we could do waivers where they could waive liability and release us from liability. The problem with a waiver in Pennsylvania is you can't waive negligence. So if there is an issue that we're aware of, now that we talked about the roof and the pathway and the crowdedness of the things that we're aware of, and we let them go in there, arguably, if one of those issues is what causes the person to get injured, that would be still negligence on us. So even if they sign that waiver, they could probably still initiate litigation over it. So always gonna come with some risks when you're letting people onto property like that. I know that they are insistent, they call Craig, but I was gonna say, they were calling me for a while. Did we get the property? Did we get the property? No, not yet. So I know they really wanna use it for that training, but again, I can't sit here and say it doesn't come with any risk, obviously.
I worry about the liability. The purpose for getting this property was for more parking, for the ball fields down there. I think we should stick with that original plan.
And Matt, my question for you, Matt, is that this could be invaluable training for all 5 of our departments. And in other municipalities, is this ever been done? Is it still done? What have other municipalities done to lessen their liability?
It hasn't happened in any of mine. I know that it does happen. I think we did it here prior to me finding out about it, that they were doing it in buildings that were gonna be on the demo list. So I think they were identifying certain buildings that we were gonna be demolishing, and then somebody, I don't know who, said, go ahead and do that, because I was told by these chiefs, before we acquired Rangeway, hey, we've always done this in the past, and I said, hey, I wasn't the solicitor, I didn't know about it, because I wouldn't have allowed it, because we don't own those properties. That's a whole different set of liabilities.
Well, that's not really answering my question, Matt, sorry, but, you know, this is gonna be demolished. We've talked about perhaps DPW even doing it.
Yeah.
So, okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's up to you guys. I mean, it's not up to me to decide whether to allow them or not. Is it valuable training? Probably. It probably is very valuable, and that's real life type experiences that they can train with. So I'm not saying, it's not up to me to say yes or no. But I was asked the question, is there liability that comes with it? And I can't sit here and say that there's no liability. We can do waivers, there's things that we can do to protect ourselves up to a certain limit, but it's not gonna be without some risk.
So even if with the waivers, or if we said, hey, you could do it, permit it, but they have to do some type of rider insurance with it, would anyone even insure that?
I don't know, I think that would be.
I inquired, they're able to insure it.
So that would release us the liability or no?
That's just insurance.
Yeah, it's insurance.
It's not really.
I could add some clarity to this, because this came through our, public, safety committee. They're wanting this to be a long-term safety thing, training center, not something that's gonna be, oh, we'll do it once,
No.
tear it down, et cetera. What they're asking for is, because it does seem the outside seems structurally sound, they wanna be able to, oh, this is how we bring a hose through a window and be able to train it up. This is how we get up and over a bar or something on those lines. Oh, there's a fire down in the basement, this is the way we can get down through there. What they had asked, they said a lot of that clearing out that they would actually do themselves. And the biggest concern right now would be the roof. And, they even volunteered to actually fix the roof, on that. They would just ask for a dumpster and some material. Talking with Greg and myself, we felt that it would be a little bit better if we were gonna do that, we would want maybe a contractor to look at that roof first.
Especially the roof.
Yeah, to make sure that it was structurally sound. Now, we're not looking for, a super nice roof, but a roof that's structurally sound that can hold the water out, so it doesn't have that type of damage. And that's what they're looking for. They're not looking to destroy the building. They're not looking to burn it down. They're looking to be able to have something that has some walls that they can kind of use to be able to get it in and out.
The problem is, it's a blighted property. You know, that's, the whole purpose we're trying to do is clean up blight. You know, we're supposed to be tearing this building down. In my opinion, I mean, I want to support the fire department every way we can, but I want a blighted building right there, you know, next to a ball field for long term. You know, the purpose we got this when the school district was to tear it down apart.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Toma that this is a worthy cause and that and I've looked through all of that and they really would do their best to make it somewhat fit for them to do their training. But this place has been blighted now for at least 4 years and it is a total mess. That's gonna be a hard decision. I'm gonna vote tear it down.
I mean, with all the land that we have available to us,
It's gotta be something else.
is there funding or grants to even erect a training center? You know, like you go out on Washington Road there where they have like the full poured concrete building that they actually start a fire in and things like that. There's gotta be something out there that we could actually maybe help to get them established with an actual facility to train on. I'd much rather do that than use this right by the golf.
And it's in a neighborhood.
And not only that, but, I reviewed some of the pictures Greg had, and the hole in the roof isn't just a small hole, it's a big one. And it's been there for how long, Greg?
4 or 5 years,
Probably
probably.
from all that water.
Okay, so how about the original thing when they came to us was, they came to you back
They did, I'm
about,
surprised to hear
like,
you say they wanted something permanent, because I was
well,
in.
couldn't we just let them do it until we tore it down?
It's your building, you guys own it.
I mean, that was your issue, is we didn't own it.
That was
We
my-
only, I think we put a rider on it already, didn't we?
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah, the issue I had originally was, we don't own the property, I can't give you access even if I wanted to. During that time, we were negotiating with the school district to basically tear it down to extend the parking lot. The concern I would have of not eventually doing that was kind of our arrangement with the school, was we were gonna tear that down and put parking in there, so we're sort of changing the deal if we keep that structure up there, but that's beside the point. But you're right, that was my original conversation with the chiefs was, I couldn't do it if we wanted to, I can't recommend it because we don't own it. I said, well, we're in the process of acquiring it, and so they said to me, well, once you get it, could the commissioners allow us to use it? And I said, yeah, they could, I mean, you can, it's your building. So that's kind of where we're at, it wasn't yeah, we're gonna allow you, it was we can't even consider it until we own it. Now we own it, so you certainly can consider it, you could do whatever you want.
But we also have a big hole in the roof for 4 years.
Right.
What's that gonna do that first floor in there? You know, what's the safety gonna be like, and mold, everything else?
Yeah,
Worry about it. Safety's more important than anything.
So basically, at this point, no matter what blighted building, if we own it or not, they could never use it as a training. Is what,
This one's right in the residential neighborhood, it's right.
well, I mean, they're all residential.
And it was donated to us two.
No, I'm asking a serious question. They're all in residential area, all our blight is in a residential area. We're saying that.
Not all my holes in the roofs for 4 years.
Okay, I'm just asking that, I'm not being sarcastic, I'm asking a serious question.
I think it's different.
Because I mean, this is something that they're
Hey,
really looking for.
we're sort of, go back in the time machine, but, maybe the redevelopment authority, once you get one set up, could actually acquire property that they could get. Yeah, I mean, that's a weird thought, but maybe
That was my question.
Yeah.
It's great. You guys have a
yeah,
list of how many properties, is there one on there that might be better situated for this? You know, that maybe
Well,
not
we
as
don't,
bad as bad?
we don't know. That's the
that's what I'm
problem.
saying, we could use the redevelopment authority.
We could get them.
Oh, there is, yeah. Better than this for sure. Less full of stuff, definitely.
This, you have to make it, almost fix it up to let them use it.
Fix it up.
One that's a little, not as bad.
let it sit there for a year or two while they train in it. No, that's not acceptable.
Not for this one. Yeah, to answer your question, Chris, we would look at another one. in my
Okay.
opinion. Yeah. So.
Commissioner Toma, I'm for doing this, but, you know, all these facts that have just come out just make me think, no, this is crazy. We can't do this.
This is the property board.
And just bear in mind, when we condemn property, we don't own the property. We only condemn it in order to give us the legal right to demolish the property. So if you're looking at identifying another piece of property, we have to own it, so.
And
one way or the other.
not this redevelopment authority.
Well, or that's what I was saying, or the redevelopment authority could actually take ownership of it, and they could transfer it to the fire department. They would own it then they have the liability. I mean, it's just another thought. I mean, not that that's down the road, but I'm just saying
Okay.
it's a possibility.
So with all that said, we now own a building that's blighted in a neighborhood. That's, I mean, the amount of stuff in that house is absolutely incredible. I mean, there's a bar, there's refrigerators, there's booths, there's all kinds of stuff. There's a whole living quarters.
It's on the demo list.
Just put it on the list.
Yeah. All
All right,
right,
thank
Josh,
you.
let's put this one on the list. Okay. Let's move on, retaining wall and parking lot paving, Greg.
Okay, so, I forget why right, again, I wanna keep things on the radar, so I don't really have any updates on this other than,
Where the old salt shed was.
yeah, I would like to see that happen. I told President Porter when we met a week ago or whatever, that, I would really like to see, there's good things happening here on the municipal building grounds. I would like to see that kind of come to fruition completely. The only thing we would have left after the fence, which starts on the 19th, I believe, was the fence out here.
Today.
Well, they weren't there today, so.
There's still time.
I would like to see a retaining wall where the old salt shed was with the pole building, because it keeps stuff out of the weather.
So
And
for
that
now, we're looking
will-
at a parking lot
So everything's stored away and the parking lot's completely finished. I don't believe we're gonna get the grant money for the parking lot since we received that money for Jack Town Road. So I believe that was considered as part of that same application.
This is something that DPW can do, both of these?
They can do the retaining wall.
Okay.
They can probably erect a building.
Well, I mean, the, paving.
You know, I haven't asked Tom that, but I did ask Paul that, and he said it was too much, it might take too much time. I could reconsider that with Paul.
Get with Tom on that, and then I guess come back to us with,
Okay.
they can do it.
I mean, cause they did a nice job on this
President
section
Boyer?
here.
Yes.
President Ford, I'd like to make a comment on this. So, I was back there the other day, and they have partially erected a temporary retaining wall. So I'm not sure what this retaining wall would mean, whether it's gonna be, continue to excavate back there and build a better retaining wall. And as far as the parking lot paving goes, it's actually gonna require milling. We do not have a milling machine, and so it's possible that it can be split up into hiring a company to mill it, and then our crew could pave it. But go ahead, that's all I want to say.
Okay, good comments. This is just early discussion on this.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Yep, I'm just gonna keep it moving, I guess.
You're gonna have that conversation with Tom.
Yeah, I think I may have talked to him about it, I mean,
Well, I mean,
Some
part
of
of
that
the,
is-
part of the hangup with the shed was we might pave the parking lot. I think we need to figure out if we're gonna actually pave the parking lot.
I mean,
That's what this would be. The shed's not even here right now.
I understand that, but are we gonna do it or are we not?
Yeah.
we could hire a company to build, and we could also do the paving, that's been done before.
That would be a good alternative.
So
Could
I'll-
we do it in sections?
Yeah, I'll talk to Tom about the feasibility, yeah, even paving sections, or like, what's the plan?
Kennedy Street retaining wall, great.
Thank you. It's actually Haymaker Road, I keep calling it Kennedy Street, I apologize. It's the retaining wall down in Glidale that holds up that road. Again, it's just on the agenda, just so we remember that it's still there. We do have a quote from KLH that Kevin put together to do a, design, right, a design for it. I have it here. Totals $27,300. That's broken up into different sections.
Idea roughly of the most to how much you think the actual fix would cost?
It's,
Ballpark.
it's 150-foot long wall, it's not excessively high. But there's also some storm sewer that would need to be, the storm sewer is kind of within the zone of what you'd be taking out for the retaining wall. You're probably looking at about 1,000 square feet, about 150 by 6 on average. So 1,000 square feet of face. I would say you're probably 40 to 50,000 on
The whole project?
not just the wall.
Just the wall?
Yeah, just the wall. Maybe, probably more actually, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah. But yeah, it would all depend on the type of material you do too. There's a range of options. You could go just concrete block, you could do a segmental retaining wall. I wouldn't recommend the soldier beam and lag wall, the steel lag beams, you don't need to do that, but it's impossible to say without, designing it first, so I just don't want to give you a number and hang your hat on it incorrectly.
So that's not gonna be a $300,000 fix.
Not as long as it's just that 150 feet that we're talking about now. Yeah.
Would we have
It's
to turn the
it's
road to
27.
do that?
Yes.
Wasn't that just repaved just recently? Haymaker? Like within the last 2 years?
Not sure.
Looks pretty good, other than that.
The other reason I say that is when you do a retaining wall, you have to have tiebacks. You're not just building it right adjacent to the
Can we
wall.
put those, like, Lego blocks up in front of what's there now? The whole- Or whatever those things, those big huge blocks that we have back here?
The jumbo blocks.
Yeah, jumbo blocks.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be fixing the root cause. You'd be putting a Band-Aid on
I mean, you've got
Gotcha.
just for.
I'm assuming you'd be out of the right of way as well.
it. And it's, That's what I was, yeah, I gotta imagine that haymaker is the bare minimum for right away.
So this 27,000, what was that for?
It includes surveying, design,
And inspection.
plan preparation, bid documents, contract documents, so that submittals, as-bills, resident observation, and contract administration.
Now, I think this is something we talked about before, that inspection cost is roughly $3,200 a week. So that can be backed out if the township felt that the public works could adequately supervise the day-to-day of it. That's no problem.
Roughly how tall was that wall?
On average, I'd say about 6 feet.
Is this a project that our DPW can do themselves?
I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that.
So, again, how many feet is this road protecting? How many feet is this wall protecting of our road?
The wall in question, Commissioner, is about 150 feet long.
So we're gonna get into the same scenario that we have up on, Jacktown, where we're gonna spend all that money to protect 4 houses. This is crazy.
This isn't near the cost of Jacktown, though.
What you just said, what Kevin would go to, could be what, 300?
No, I asked if it was,
Yeah,
less,
I would say less than 100 is very fair.
less than 100, quite fair, I'd say 6.
Okay,
But again,
not a, but yeah, I get it.
yeah, we would need
Is this
to,
something that we want to move forward with this year? I don't want to pay for specs and that, if I'm going to do it. You think it's going to be less than 100,000?
sure.
Because we have more guys.
Let's talk them down there, right? Oh, yeah, let's get Tom down there first.
Like, after he said he was gonna tackle,
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills,
Jack,
I mean, this doesn't seem anywhere near the.
No, it's a small, much smaller project. Why don't you go with Tom and let's, in your report for our meeting, for January, let's talk about it then.
Sure.
We can all get down and look at it, figure out whether they can do it or not, then we have a clear picture of what we can do.
Sure, do you need anything from me before January?
I would get with Tom.
Just coordinate with Tom.
Yeah, get with Tom, get him down there, just to make sure that, how he feels about it.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, does that sound good, guys?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, next is, 2023 Township priorities.
This came from a conversation with President Boyer at some point, I can't remember, but I just wanted to share an experience. Some of you might know and not know that I was a councilman in a much smaller borough for 18 years. I was also on the planning commission. And we had a method of, now again, a much smaller borough. There's bigger problems here for sure. We had a system of, at the beginning of each year, setting up priorities. And the way we did it was we had the committees established ahead of time, even if they weren't actually established, before, at the reorg meeting. I mean, we knew ahead of time who was gonna work on what. We had each committee come to the meeting with 3 top priorities. It was a 7-person council. So we ended up with 21 priorities. And then after our reorg meeting, we wrote those down on a whiteboard. We had kind of a system of discussing them as a council and trying to decide what we as a council wanted to tackle for that year. Most importantly, once the list was decided, we stuck with it. These are big, this isn't day-to-day stuff, this is big stuff. And we chopped away at it all throughout the year. I did this for 18 years, huge success. I would love to see us do something. I mean, we come to the workshop meetings, I understand this is an open venue, we get to talk about a lot of things, but it's also a little overwhelming, don't you agree? I mean, we're talking about everything we talk about, we're talking about spending money, big money, priorities during the year shift, which I've always said, and I'll say it again, causes great chaos internally within staffing, because everything has to shift with it. And whatever we were working on has to stay behind, and that stay behind involves all this communication, especially on my part. So I'm not not necessarily like crying the blues here, but it's not efficient, it's not necessarily working. So I just wanted to throw it out there that I would propose that we do something similar, or at least try to, and try to change the culture moving forward.
So basically what we'll do is beginning of the year, get a list of the major projects we will do in twenty-three. Unless there's an emergency, those are our projects.
Yeah.
So we're gonna stick to it, then look at next projects in 2024. Rather than, on the whim switching stuff. It's just, again, we pay for engineering fees for KLH. If we change stuff, then we pay fees for nothing. So this
Or
kinda
the
just-
problem gets worse.
Yeah,
we pay it
this
again.
kind of just, keeps
Well,
everything on
that
track.
benefits them too, but ultimately it benefits us,
Yeah,
because
everybody,
we have a
yeah.
focus, and
Yep.
if they have a focus.
And I have
everybody
a
has
focus with the
Yeah.
staff.
Everybody has an expectation.
Yeah.
It works.
I think it's a great idea, Greg, but it's gonna have to be an awful big whiteboard.
Well,
And keep your resume.
only if we write big.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I can help get it started. I
I think, everybody, even if there's any projects, large projects you're thinking of, let's get an email together to Greg. So Greg can kind of get a list together and we'll talk about it, this will be part of the discussion for, our January meeting.
Yeah, okay, if you have anything, send it to me. Otherwise, I'll,
And this is through committee too, correct? So recreation will have one, all the committees will get to put their top three in, so to speak.
yeah, that's how we did it, and then, not every committee's priority made it to the final list, but it was just a
Right.
realistic list at the
It's a
end.
start. Any questions, comments on this? Good, let's move on. Next is China Fortune Restaurant refund.
Okay, China Fortune Restaurant, back in 2017, I guess they didn't have a grease trap at the time, I'm still not sure if they do or not, that's a restaurant in Swiss Alpine. They clogged our sanitary system pretty badly, so we had it cleaned, and then or whoever at that time was in charge of that particular situation, asked them to pay back the total of that fix, which at the time was $7,645 back in 2017. They have made payments anywhere from $1,000 to $500 a year, a month. Well, that looks like a quarter, actually. Yeah, a quarter. Until they eliminated that cost or that debt, and they just made their final payment. They're all paid on it. So thank you publicly for doing that. They came to me and asked for, in the original invoice from the township, there was a 10% administrative fee, which came to $764. And they asked if, since they paid timely and in good faith, if we would, drop that fee from 2017 and not ask them to pay $764 more.
They said in 2017, they were told that if they made all their payments on time, that they would get that refunded. So now they're coming and asking for that refund. So, and they,
And it's kind of a verbal.
it's a completely verbal agreement, but, they did make all their payments in good faith.
5 years later, I'm in favor of the refund, but I have one little comment. And this has to do, with, other places that we've seen this happen, like Mount Vernon Apartments has clogged up our sanitary multiple times for the same reason. We should have a formal ordinance, that we can chart for these kind of things.
That's a great idea, Cal. Matt, would you work on that? Okay, Matt will work on that for us. We're going forward. Is everybody okay putting this on the agenda for January?
So it's not a refund, it would be just to forgive the 10%.
Is that, I'm not sure if they paid it or not.
No, they didn't.
Oh, okay, it'll be for
So they paid everything but that.
Correct.
Okay.
But that's on the original invoice. They're trying to, not pay that.
I mean, I will say, just off camera, you really don't need an ordinance, because if they cause a problem, they're liable for it, but I'll look at it and see what
We
language.
probably
is out there.
should have
If you
something
want
in
something.
place. I think we should have
I mean, that's
something.
the general law, though, is.
Cal, do you know how often this has happened throughout the township?
At Mount Vernon Apartments, it's happened twice in my 5 years.
Okay, so enough that we need to address it.
Do we know if they had grease
was, I don't know. But it hasn't clocked since.
They have a grease trap, I don't think the employees were using it. So, that's what it comes down to, so. Okay, next is, Duncan Station generator, Greg?
Again, KLH spec'd out a generator for Duncan Station. This is, this was because during our meeting, or after the progress meeting last month for the pump stations, we started talking about SSOs at Duncan Station due to the loss of electricity. I think Commissioner Walk asked me to call West Penn about that. I haven't done it yet, but it's still on my short list. But then I talked to Kevin about, if we should move forward with this, if new electrical service would help the problem. The SSOs are being caused by electrical outages, which stops the pump and makes it overflow. And Kevin said, well, a generator is something that's gonna be required anyways, correct?
Correct.
What's the cost of that roughly?
$50,000.
$50,000.
Yeah, I have an answer for that one. We actually did the estimate for that. And that's for both natural gas and diesel. Once you get up to the bigger size generators, it becomes more efficient to do natural gas. So we always price out for the smaller generators, so they're usually less.
I mean, it's something we have to get.
Is that a cost for the item, or is that cost and install?
The way it was framed to us is that you had a local electrician who would bid on that install. So this is just the unit itself.
I think Russ able to install that kind of stuff for us.
Is it a complicated install or not really?
Rich, President Boyer,
Yes.
Kevin Cray and I have also had a discussion as to whether or not this should be natural gas versus diesel. Just some overview on this. The generators cost the same whether it's diesel or natural gas. The long-term use of the generator would be certainly cheaper with natural gas, but that would involve running a gas line from the potentially existing gas line on the opposite side of the road to Duncan Station. Diesel has its drawbacks as well because as maybe you know that diesel gets kind of gelled up when it gets really cold. Hard call because if the electrical three-phase is straightened out down there, which might never happen, we might not have any more outages, but we have to have it anyhow. So the basic decision here has to be whether it's going to be diesel or natural gas. And quite frankly, I think we really ought to leave that up to the engineers to decide what's the best way to go.
What do you think the best way is to go?
If the natural gas was present at the site today, I would absolutely tell you natural gas.
We have to go under the road?
Right.
So diesel, you're saying?
So there's really no road there, so digging the ditch could be literally less than 100 feet or less than that even.
Yeah, if
The
you're,
road's ticked, so it doesn't matter.
yeah, if you're willing to do that little extra bit, then I would always suggest you natural.
And that's something our DPW can probably dig and.
Absolutely. That's easy, when they can do that easy.
That's what I'm
easy.
thinking, at least, you know, they can short it, yeah, trench it, doesn't have a farm permit. So, I would personally like to see the natural gas.
If we did natural gas lines, are like inspection costs from outside people that we'd have to run.
I mean,
Yeah, but it would be a contractor, rather than like, maybe, probably
Correct.
And it's 100 feet.
You'd want to have a master plumber pool permit at the county.
what do you think that would cost us with the farm permit? We're gonna do it likewise.
I don't know.
Russ Hayward's already said he could do it.
Ross can do it, okay.
That'd be very reasonable, and you just have to have Allegheny County come out and inspect, the plumbing department of Allegheny County comes out and inspects the pressure on the gas line. They do that all the time.
And this is something we have to have. We wanna put this on the January agenda?
Yes.
Everybody okay with that? Okay.
Yes.
Let's move forward. Jacktown Road geotech study. Great.
So this is just another item that's out there currently. KLH again, but Akin Hill involved to give us a quote For the remaining 4 slides on Jacktown, they've already done the core samples for the first 3, the big ones at the very end. Again, I'm sitting on it, I didn't know what to do with it, I thought I'd bring it to your attention, it's $36,170.
Is that just for coming off Mill Hill, or is that the other ones that halfway on Jacktown?
They're all still in front of the homes, it's not that isolated section, it's all stuff pretty close to the original 3, it's kind of all sort of the same problem, caused by the same hillside. It's not that section though that we talked about.
So it's not the section that has those barriers, the sand.
It's not that far off.
Okay, so it's over more towards Mill Hill.
Yeah, in fact, they're like right in a row, pretty close to each other. They're pretty small at this point, it would be a good time to catch them.
I mean, most of the commissioners, I think, have been up to see this. And I thought everybody felt it was quite cheaper for the township in the long run to look at that area off of Mill Hill. If everybody's familiar with Jacktown coming off of Mill Hill, we shut it down years ago. We think we can get back open to 1 lane just for those 4 or 5 houses there, and then stop on the other end of those houses and just, basically abandon the street until it gets to the next houses. And that's where the major slide was. So we'd avoid the $1 million fix and go for a much cheaper fix this way, and fix it right. So,
That's well said, President Poirier. I just would ask Kevin if he's had a chance to look at the other section of Jacktown towards Mill Hill.
Yes,
so what are your thoughts on our plan for that? Just fixing that part for those 4 or 5 houses right there, and then off that street on,
I think that's a good,
much cheaper.
a good solution, sure, just pending, is that,
Well,
is that the
so-
final
And in the
solution,
long,
or is that?
and in the long run, safer too, because that section between First Jacktown and, it's gonna fail,
Yeah. So I think this is the best solution. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think all of us ones looked at it, thought this was the best solution. Tom's not to look at it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
him and I were both on that.
Okay, what were Tom's thoughts?
His first suggestion was, let's just build a new road behind all the property, let's just take it up over the hill. It's a good idea, cost-wise, I have no idea.
Yeah, we have to take property for that.
Yeah, he just said they're bad slides, obviously, that was his first reaction. He didn't say much about the fix, we were looking at a lot of different things. I eventually told him the idea of cutting out the middle section, he liked that idea. He thought that the Mill Hill side was fixable, for sure. And it looks like it had, I've been looking at it for 3 years, it hasn't really moved in 3 years at all.
Josh, it's solid.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we should move forward with, whatever we need to do. Start
We could put some kind of turnaround in, or like a hammerhead or a cul-de-sac type thing.
We do have
You have to put some kind of turnaround when you end it.
I wouldn't necessarily say a cul-de-sac.
No, but a
yeah,
hammerhead or something like that.
Yeah.
How would that affect our, plow trucks going?
Well, that's why I said we need a turnaround.
So they want this one truck place, you go up there and push it straight, you go pile on, go back on, turn around and come back on the street.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just never been determined. Okay, put this on the agenda for January? For the study?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, next is, bucket truck bidding sites, no spending limit, estimate of around 100,000, Greg?
So there was a little bit of emails flying around about this, I think, at least in theory, so, Tom has been looking for used bucket trucks online, and he has a site that he has worked with before. He currently has bucket trucks that were used, they're FEMA bucket trucks used down in Florida, I guess, like the storm, a storm, and they're getting rid of them, they generally have about 30,000 miles on them. I don't know there is no cost, it's a straight bidding auction site. They're in really good shape, they were not flooded, they're just done with them, I guess they bought a bunch and now they're done with them for now, I don't know how FEMA works, but he said it's fairly common, actually. But the only thing is once you sign up for the site, and you make a bid, you're committed to it, so you gotta know what your bid limit is. I think it's great, the quote for the new truck was around $200,000, and he's looking at, him and I talked casually, and I said, what do you think would be a good good number, you know, that's competitive to get a similar truck with a similar reach with that many miles on it. He said we should probably start at maybe 100, and we could probably try to get it for around 100, maybe 120.
So what we wanted to do was give Tom a spending limit that he can go up to on this site. We're gonna use ARPA funds for this, so we already have funds available. Yeah, Greg, what's your opinion? Is 100 enough? Should it be 120? I mean, new, we're looking over 200,000 for the truck.
I think 100, I don't know if I'd go over 120, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think 100 might be a good, very competitive price. I don't know how many they have.
I don't know, but I don't wanna lose something that might be good.
Yeah.
Has he looked at, like, what some are going for currently? Somewhat for it.
You can't find any that are in this condition, with that low mileage,
We
it's
don't
only
know
FEMA.
when it starts, what we're gonna go to, so I'm almost thinking we give them up to 120,000.
I'm gonna say 125.
I just can't see you getting it for 125, 30,000 miles,
Yeah.
a $200,000 truck, is it only a year old? Is it 2 years old? How old is it?
Was there a recent storm in Florida? It's from, I can't remember if there was, it's from a recent, one of the hurricane seasons out of Florida.
Yeah, it was the one that was the soccer.
Yeah, over the summer. I don't know why they're getting rid of them, but he said that's what FEMA does.
I mean,
FEMA's all in the business of bucket trucks, they buy them, they get things fixed.
when they sell,
They sell them.
yeah. There's
Yeah, they
a
don't want
shortage
to-
of them right now. And the thing is, it's hard to find trucks now, bucket trucks.
Oh, it's very,
Yeah.
it's very, very
I
hard.
don't know, it's not the, not to exceed number.
That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So,
He has to know so he can't, overbid.
What were you thinking?
I don't know, I mean, I think if you could find something in good condition for 140 or less,
and again,
Might be
if
too
he gets it
much.
for 100 or 110, that's great,
Yeah.
that's what he's gonna do.
what, I mean, you're more familiar with this than
I'm just thinking, I mean, we sell stuff on eBay and all that. Once he starts going, he's gonna have a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
So, and it's not a day, usually typically about a week. So if he hits that one, he says,
maybe you could ask.
hey, Greg, send him a, hey, I need another 20 grand. So we gotta kind of know where we're
Well,
going.
again, if we're gonna go to 120, 140 anyways, let's just give a price now. You know, I mean, what do you think then?
I say, 140. To get it today, like,
Yeah.
you're losing at 200 if you buy new, you're gonna be up till 2025.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, they're so hard to find right now, if you have a buffer there, like, if he's stuck at 120 and it goes for 125, then what do you do?
And I should put ours on music, but we'll sell it, I bet you 25. So there's.
So we wanna give them we wanna put it on the agenda for Monday for 140?
Two Mondays from now.
Or 2 months, yeah, first month, yeah. January meeting. Okay.
I'd be fine with that.
Okay, let's do that, we'll put it on the meeting for Monday. The next two things,
I think that before you go away on that,
yeah,
and so Commissioner Campus just brought up a good point. It does take a week or so. These things are going to be now happening right now. We could do this by resolution as well. He also commented for him to be able to sign up for the site, which I think we've already approved. Also keep in mind that if we were to want a new one, that we're talking a year and a half, and the one that we have isn't gonna make it that long. So, I would ask that the board consider telling him to go ahead and find one, and then we do this by resolution up to 140.
when does the bidding start on these, you know, Greg?
I mean, they're on the site now.
Oh, are they? Okay.
But just remember, there would be also the cost of getting it from Florida to Pennsylvania.
I'll go.
All right?
There we go. That works.
Yeah, right, you're right. You have to have a CDL to drive that, so Dennis Campus would have to go.
They'll ride with you.
Next, I was just, Josh had brought up something about starting a new, like a business development committee like we used to have. And just wanted to kind of get everybody's thoughts, thinking we would need a committee of 3 commissioners, but I think 1 commissioner just to kind of oversee them. And just have the committee be all basically resident business owners, just to, maybe you want to talk about what you were thinking about, Josh.
Sure. So I won't be long on this. I've always grown up in a business environment. I went to school for accounting, I have a minor in entrepreneurial studies. My So I've always really like enjoyed business, and I've always considered myself very pro-business, and I think, in any capacity as a commissioner, I can be pro-business, I would like to do that. I think if you ask anybody on this board right now, is Elizabeth Township pro-business? I think everyone's like, yeah, sure, yeah, we love business. But if you talk to business owners, or if you know, not only business owners currently, but maybe people in the last 5 or 10 years who have attempted to open businesses in Elizabeth Township, there's been different things that got in the way. And I have multiple examples, I'm not gonna mention them, but of people who have been discouraged from opening businesses in Elizabeth Township. I think it's things that maybe aren't mentioned or aren't known or aren't as obvious to the board, or maybe it's little things we can do to correct a code, or I don't know. I just think Elizabeth Township should be very pro-business, should be, you know, appropriate businesses. You know, I even suggest, we were joking, Dan and I, like maybe at an entry to our township, like Elizabeth Township's open for business, you know, that kind of thing. But it's more so just a conversation about what can we do to entice businesses to come into our township, into our community, and you know, create jobs and create tax revenue, that kind of thing.
We had this committee before, I actually chaired it, back a few years ago. It was actually going very strong until COVID hit, went away, so now basically want to bring it back again. I thought it's a great idea, just want to hear everybody's ideas, if they're okay moving forward with something like this. And Josh, would you like to head that?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. The second was, I think years ago, and I think our recreation committee was formed with all our residents on it. And I'd kind of like to bring that back again, get the resident involvement. Same as the business committee, but, you know, for recreation.
I think that's a great idea as well. I actually had a resident reach out to me this weekend about, if she could participate in something like that, so.
Would somebody
Here,
like-
here.
Would somebody like to chair
Funny,
this?
I had a similar conversation. I would love to do that.
Okay, that sounds good. Just while we're talking about committees, we have Chris House in place. I think he's doing a great job. I don't really know that we need a code enforcement committee anymore. We have Tom for DPW in place. I don't know that we have a DPW committee anymore. That's why we have Greg. Greg oversees these guys. So I would almost like to take those committees away, and basically, like, we're gonna have a new MS4 committee. You know, we have a public relations committee that helps promote Elizabeth Township. You know, I'm just trying to look for ideas, what you guys think you'd like to see for the committees for 2023, and have committees that we really think is gonna have impact on the township. Because we're not here micromanaging employees. We have Greg this year for that.
I don't look at it as micromanaging, I'm looking at it as.
You know what I mean? Still.
I'm looking at it as us knowing kind of what's going on and not creating a disconnect and, you know, things like that.
Okay.
You know, Greg shouldn't be the only go-to, all the time. I can see the argument that you're making, that, you know, we have these people, but,
And this is why I'm putting up here. If you guys want to keep these
that's
committees,
my
we
thought.
can keep
I just
them.
don't want, I
If
don't
you
wanna see,
don't,
I don't wanna see a disconnect between the employees and us.
That's all.
I don't,
This should be personnel committee
I
then?
don't think it costs anything to have.
It doesn't.
If you don't use it,
Yeah, that doesn't mean you have to meet all the time.
I would even if you don't have a standing meeting, you could either do it like a quarterly, like
Yeah.
review or talk or check-in. I think it's important to oversee it though.
So do you want to keep all three of those committees still then?
it's a low cost, there's really good time, I mean, if they're running good,
Okay.
don't speak, have a phone call, and get it done.
Kyle, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, Dan. What was just commented that, I don't see any reason to dissolve the committee.
Keep them in just as needed.
Something that you mentioned, zero, that technical group,
You're muffled there, Kyle.
sorry. You can just mention or to pick their favorite committees and go for it, and leave the ones that are there in place.
Okay.
They don't even have to have anybody assigned to them necessarily if you don't feel it's necessary.
I don't think we always need three on every committee either. So that's.
Right.
Okay. So we'll keep the committees we have now all in place, and then we're gonna add these, the MS4, and then some of these will just be the more residents, but there'll be a commissioner overseeing. them.
I think if we do out of those committees, those three main things, that will drive those meetings and things, because that might be the onus of the conversation.
Yeah. That sounds good to me then. Anything else?
I have here the, emergency operations plan that was adopted by you guys a couple months ago. I just realized, after talking to our emergency management coordinator, that it needs signed by every single commissioner.
Okay.
So if you don't mind signing it before you leave, and Kyle, I'll catch up with you later.
I do have one comment on this, which has occurred to me, in a discussion I had with my brother. Should there be necessity for sheltering in Elizabeth Township? Currently, I believe that the emergency plan calls for sheltering in our schools. My brother, who sits on a FEMA medical team, will tell you that the first thing to get a community back together again after an emergency is indeed the use of their schools. And if our schools are being used as emergency sheltering, that just doesn't happen. Luckily, we live in Elizabeth Township where it's unlikely to happen, but we do have the community center, which is pretty amazing, the number of bunk beds, the facilities, cooking facilities, the kitchen facilities that are available over there should we have an emergency. So I think that plan needs to be reviewed and talk to Damian Michaels about whether or not that's feasible to do this.
Good.
I'll do that.
Also, Cal, you currently sit on the SHACOG board.
Yep.
I received a letter, they would like us to have a backup, just in case you can't make it. This is for all municipalities. Do we currently have a backup for you?
Yeah, we do, but I can't remember who it is.
Does anybody know who that is, or does anybody want to volunteer for that? They have a once-a-month meeting. It would be if Cal couldn't make it, or if you want to go with Cal, and they serve dinner. So it's our
Yeah,
government.
so-
The dinner might entice them.
Yeah, so they usually serve lobster tail and filet mignon. Well,
I don't know if there's anybody who wants to back up Cal on that? Or you
Hey, it's,
let Cal
really-
know.
Is it in the evening or is it?
It's in the evening. Yes, definitely evening.
I mean, I
It's
don't know.
at 7:30 once a month, it lasts until 8:30, it varies.
You only missed 2 last year out of 12, so Kyle, so.
No, I didn't miss any, I got both of those on Zoom.
Oh, okay, that's why they didn't have you on there, okay. So you did make one, so you might not have to do it.
Meeting in 5 years, no way. Actually, I'm gonna be president next year because I didn't miss any meetings.
Second is, I currently sit on the EMS board. I prefer to have someone that's on the public safety committee maybe sit on it.
If
Again,
you
that's-
decided to do that, it's already,
We'll probably keep boards pretty similar unless there's people that wanna switch, so.
well, right now, there's only
Yeah, right
two.
now it's only us two.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Do you guys wanna both stay on that one?
Yes, I do.
So would one of you like to be on the EMS board?
We can talk about that later.
That's all. Well, once you add the third person. we'll-
Yeah.
No one just signed. Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Dan, before we get off the EMS board, currently serving on that board is, Chris Evans and also my brother, Knox Walk, and I
And
believe.
Jane Blake.
And, oh, okay,
Yeah,
and
Jay
Jay,
Blake's also, but they want, a commissioner, they want to sit on there also.
right, gotcha.
Yeah, I just thought it should be good, someone from that committee should probably sit on that one.
All right, great.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
With that, wish everybody a happy holiday and, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.